I worked on that for 6 months. I said, my hands still lightly brushing the cradle's smooth edge. Tara didn't even look up from her phone. "We don't need your junk," she said with a snort, like I'd just handed her a pile of splinters. Then, before I could blink, she grabbed the cradle and walked it straight to the trash can by the garage. She dropped it in with a loud thud, like it had never held weight, never held love. Everyone went quiet. Kevin stood near the grill holding a plate of sliders. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the mulch under his feet like that might explain how we'd gotten here. I looked around. Nobody else seemed surprised. Maybe they'd seen it coming. Maybe I hadn't wanted to. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry, but I smiled. I smiled because I've learned that silence is its own kind of armor. I walked to the bin, opened the lid, and gently lifted the cradle back out. The edge of one leg was scuffed now, but it held together. I brushed it off with the sleeve of my cardigan and set it beside my purse. "Thank you for the food," I said quietly, to no one in particular. "And congratulations." Tara was already back inside, laughing with her sister over a tray of canapes. Kevin didn't look at me when I passed him. He just shifted aside so I could get through. By the time I got to my car, the cradle was resting in the back seat, like it belonged there all along. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. I just drove home with the windows down, letting the early spring wind pull through the silence. When I got home, I left the cradle on the porch. I made a pot of coffee. And then I sat on the steps in the dark, staring at the shape of it under the porch light, trying to remember the last time something I made was called a gift. That cradle wasn't just wood and polish. It was for their first child, my grandchild. Every curve had been shaped by hand, every corner sanded smooth until it felt like velvet. I had made dozens over the years, each one for a neighbor, a niece, a friend's daughter. But this one was different. It was for Kevin. I'd started the moment they told me they were expecting. 6 months of carving and shaping, late nights in the garage with my old tools, soft music on the radio and coffee going cold beside me. I picked the cherry wood myself, a rich, warm tone that would deepen over the years. I imagined them rocking the baby to sleep, fingers tracing the grain, telling them your grandma made this. But Tara had always wanted new things. Sleek, pale plastic furniture from stores I couldn't pronounce. Monitors that talked to phones. Cribs that folded by remote. Her world didn't have space for hand-carved heirlooms. She liked labels and receipts, things with warranty cards. And Kevin just wanted things quiet. He didn't fight her on the wedding guest list. He didn't say a word when they moved my photo off the mantel and replaced it with one of her dog. And now he had stood there while the cradle hit the bottom of a trash can. He had looked at his shoes and let it happen. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was too old to be shocked, that I'd seen worse and forgiven more. But that night, as I sat on the porch, staring at the cradle beneath the porch light, I felt something shift. Not rage, not sorrow, just the sharp, clear click of something locking into place. I brought it inside and set it near the fireplace. Then I opened the old cedar chest where I'd kept my sewing patterns and tools. I hadn't touched them in years, but that night I laid them all out on the floor one by one, like I was meeting old friends again. I didn't sleep much that night. I moved around the house slowly, careful not to make noise, though there was no one left to wake. The cradle sat in the hallway, catching moonlight through the front window. For a while I just stood there with my coffee staring at it. Then I fetched a blanket, wrapped it gently, and carried it to the car. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing else to say. Halfway down the driveway, I saw a light flick on across the street. My neighbor Lorna stepped out to collect her paper even though it was still dark. She saw me standing beside the car and raised a hand. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked. I nodded. That's all I had in me. She hesitated, then walked over, glancing at the cradle in the back seat. That's beautiful, she said. Did you make it? I nodded again. She looked down at her slippers, then back at me. My niece just moved in with the baby coming. She's barely 20, no crib yet. Nothing set up. I didn't want to ask you for anything, but I opened the door before she could finish. It's hers, I said. Her eyes filled and she tried to thank me, but I just smiled and waved it off. I didn't do it for gratitude. I just didn't want to look at that cradle anymore and wonder who it had been meant for. Lorna drove it over that morning. I stayed inside, made another pot of coffee, and sat in the chair by the window. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but all I felt was quiet. Not peace, not yet, but something near it. I didn't go back to Kevin's after that. Not for the ultrasound photos, not for the gender reveal, not even when they sent a group text about the baby shower. I deleted it, not with anger, but with understanding. Some doors don't close all at once. They creak. And then one day, you realize they've been shut for a long time. So I opened the one to my workshop instead. The next morning, I unlocked the workshop behind my house, a space I hadn't entered in months. The door stuck a little from the rain, but it opened on the second push. Dust danced in the slant of morning light. My old coffee canister was still tucked beside the battered radio. I filled the kettle, turned the dial, and let the soft hum of static fill the silence. There's something sacred about the scent of oak and glue. Most people wouldn't understand, but for me, it's a kind of prayer. I ran my fingers along the workbench, familiar nicks, dried varnish, the outline of tools I hadn't used since before the holidays. Maybe even before that. I rolled up my sleeves. I didn't think about Tara. I didn't think about Kevin. I just thought about Curve's balanced joinery. I opened my old sketchbook and started drawing. Not a cradle. Something new. A rocker. A keepsake box. Maybe a toy chest. Something for no one. Something for me. That first day I didn't finish anything, but I didn't need to. It was enough to work again, to feel the wood yield beneath my hands, to hear the rhythm of the sanding block. By midweek, I had 3 new designs, all simple and warm. On a whim, I posted one of them, just a rough photo of a toy chest with a leaf inlay on Etsy. I hadn't updated the page in years. I figured no one would see it. But they did. 6 inquiries came in by Friday, and 1 message from a woman in Ohio. Can you make this with my late mother's initials engraved? It's for my daughter's birthday. I wrote back, yes. I'd start right away. That night, I sanded long after dark, the door open to the early spring breeze. I didn't play music. I let the scrape of tools be enough. And just before heading in, I checked my inbox again. 2 more orders. One from a parenting blog. They'd found me through someone else's post, a picture of a baby in a hand-carved cradle. It started with a single photo. A customer had sent me pictures of the cradle I made, now cradling her baby boy beneath a soft blue quilt. She tagged my Etsy shop, adding a caption that said, "Handmade, love, thank you, Odessa." I didn't expect anything from it. Just seeing the baby sleep so peacefully in something I'd shaped was enough. But within hours, messages started rolling in. Some wanted to know if I did custom engraving. Others asked for shipping quotes or wood options. A few simply wrote, "Is this yours? I want one." The following day, I got an email from a woman named Laurel. She ran the regional baby expo downtown and had seen the tagged post. "We'd love to offer you a vendor table," she wrote. "No pressure. Just think about it." I stared at the message for a long time. I hadn't stood behind a table with my work since the county fair 8 years ago. That time, I barely sold 2 pieces. I remembered sitting there with aching feet, watching crowds pass me by, distracted by the noise of giveaways and bright plastic displays. But this felt different. So I said yes. 2 weeks later, I arrived with 3 cradles, 2 toy chests, and a box of hand-carved blocks. I didn't wear anything fancy. just a clean work shirt, jeans, and my name stitched into a cloth badge. At first, people drifted past without much more than a glance. Then one woman stopped, then another. By noon, my table was surrounded. I sold out everything, even the display pieces. One customer cried when I handed her the cradle she'd pre-ordered. Another woman asked if I taught classes. And then a man in a gray blazer approached me with a business card. Design Consultant Magnolia Interiors, it read. He smiled. You ever consider boutique collaboration? Your work tells a story. I tucked the card into my pocket without a word. That night, when I unpacked my empty bins, I sat on the edge of the van and realized my hands weren't shaking. They were steady. Ready. It was a Tuesday morning when Leslie called. I was halfway through sanding a toy chest when the phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Auntie, she said breathlessly, you're in a magazine. I wiped my hands on a rag. What magazine? She sent the link before I could ask again. There it was, front and center on the homepage of Mothers and Makers Monthly. A photo of me hunched over a cradle, my silver hair tied back in a loose knot. The caption read, The Hands of Heritage Odessa Lane and the Return of Storytelling Woodwork. My name, my work. And I hadn't even known they were watching. Later, I found out someone from the Baby Expo had submitted my booth to a juried Artisan feature. The committee picked a handful of small creators to spotlight craft, rooted in legacy, they called it. I didn't even remember the photographer taking the shot. The article wasn't long, but it said enough. They mentioned my cradle designs, my use of salvaged wood, my quiet revival of traditional joinery. There was a quote I barely remembered giving, I don't use machines for the sole parts. I printed a copy and slipped it into the drawer where I used to keep Kevin's drawings. That same week, Kevin and Tara posted matching selfies, her cradling her stomach, him holding a product sample box. Excited to partner with these amazing brands, the caption read. I scrolled past it, then set my phone down and got back to work. Their world ran on followers and filters. Mine ran on sawdust and slow patience. That night, I sat alone in the workshop and stared at my hands. The same hands they once told me were too rough to hold a newborn. The same hands that shaped everything they now pretended not to need. But my inbox was full of new orders, and somewhere in the quiet of that evening, the hum of a new idea settled into my bones. By morning, I was sketching again, this time something bigger. The envelope arrived on a Monday, thick white formal. Kevin's name on the corner in his rushed handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I finished my tea, folded. The laundry swept the porch. Only when the sun dipped below the maple trees did I slit it open and find the check inside. $500. No note. Just his signature in the bottom right corner, the same way he used to sign permission slips I'd forgotten to write. 3 days later, a postcard arrived from Tara. Pink and floral, like something plucked from a clearance bin. Sorry if the gift upset you, it read. We didn't mean to. That was all. No return address. I sat at the kitchen table with both in my hands. The check I folded once then again and slid into a stamped envelope addressed back to him. The postcard I didn't return, couldn't return. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my old sewing chest, the one where I kept broken buttons and bits of ribbon too short to use. I never looked at it again. The days passed. Orders came in steadily. A boutique in Vermont requested a full nursery set. I stayed busy, which helped. Movement steadied the ache. Then one afternoon, on my way to deliver a piece across town, I drove past the children's hospital. Something made me pull in. I didn't know what until I stepped into the lobby. There, beside the welcome desk, sat one of my cradles. I recognized the carved vines and initials burned into the side. A former customer had donated it after her twins outgrew it. A nurse told me it now rocked newborns awaiting long-term placement. Inside was a baby girl sleeping with one hand curled under her cheek. peaceful, safe. I stood there longer than I meant to, 10 minutes, maybe more. No one recognized me. No one needed to. I walked out into the wind and let the cold sting my face. That evening, I turned on every light in the workshop and began preparing for the expo in Ithaca. It was just past 7 on a Sunday evening when I heard the knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. The workshop was quiet, the last cradle packed and ready for shipment. I wiped my hands on a towel, heart steady, and opened the door. Kevin stood there, older somehow. His hair, longer face, thinner. No car in sight. He held nothing, just his own nervous weight. "I just wanted to see you," he said. I didn't answer right away. I stepped back and let him in. He looked around like he was stepping into a place he barely remembered. I brewed coffee, poured 2 cups, set them on the table between us. We sat in the quiet, surrounded by the scent of wood shavings and varnish. His eyes scanned the shelves, the sketches, the new tools he didn't recognize. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't know it meant that much to you." I let the words hang in the air. Then I met his eyes. "It didn't matter that you didn't know," I said. "It mattered that you didn't ask, that you stood there and watched her throw me out of your life and you let her." His lip trembled. He reached for the mug but didn't drink. His hands were shaking. I didn't know how to stop it. "You didn't try." He nodded, eyes glassy. I was wrong. I waited not with anger but with something firmer, something earned. He started crying then. Shoulders bent inward like a boy again. But I didn't move to comfort him. I had done that all his life. This time I let the tears come without rushing to fix them. When he quieted, I stood. Walked him to the door. "You'll always be my son," I said softly. "But I won't be your silence anymore." He blinked at me like he didn't know what to say. Maybe for once there was nothing left to say. I watched him walk down the drive, hands in his pockets, slower than he used to. Inside, the coffee had gone cold. I poured it out and returned to my bench. A new order was waiting. The new studio is warm in a way my old garage never was. Morning light pours through the tall windows and the air smells of coffee, cedar, and sawdust. I share the space with 3 other artisans, metalworker, ceramicist, and weaver, and somehow it works. We speak in nods and passing compliments in the rhythm of tools against raw material. I arrive early, leave late. My name is now quietly known in small circles. Custom nursery pieces, engraved heirlooms, hand-finished details no machine can mimic. My wait list runs 6 months ahead. Boutique shops send emails. Some offer partnerships. I say yes only when it feels right. There's a bulletin board in the entryway now, covered in thank you cards and baby photos. My cradles have rocked newborns in 12 states and counting. One even made its way to a children's hospice in Oregon. That one meant the most. I still think of Kevin sometimes. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just distance. I think about the last birthday card I sent him before everything changed. I remember the first time he held a hammer next to me, too young to lift it properly. I remember late-night science projects and how he cried when he chipped a carving I'd spent hours on, and how I told him mistakes were just proof of trying. But I don't grieve anymore, because I gave him everything I had. Now I give to people who see me, who write notes that say, "We could feel your care in every curve," who name their children after the grandparents they lost, and ask me to carve those names into the wood. Those are the legacies I hold in my hands. One morning, as I finish sealing a toy chest for a family in Maine, I look out the window. Snow's beginning to fall, soft and slow. I sip my coffee, hear the hum of machines in the other bays, and feel full in a way I never thought I would again. And then my phone pings an invitation to a charity gala downtown. Donated artisans welcome. Silent auction for children's housing. I say yes. The charity gala was held in the old train depot downtown, strung with soft lights and filled with soft laughter. Tables lined the room with handcrafted items, quilts, paintings, metal sculptures, and near the entrance, one of my cradles. I donated it quietly, no announcement, no plaque. Just a simple oak build with maple inlays, steady, timeless mine. As the evening moved on, I drifted past the table where it stood dressed in a white ribbon and a card that read, Silent Auction Item 43. A young couple stood beside it, holding hands, whispering. When the woman saw me, her eyes lit up. She touched her partner's arm and leaned in. She's the one, she whispered. She made this. I paused, unsure if I should respond, but she stepped closer. It's beautiful, she said, fingers brushing the curved edge of the rocker. Her husband glanced at me and smiled. No, he said gently. It's priceless. I felt my throat tighten, not from pain, but from recognition. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that says, I see what you gave. I nodded once and walked on. Later that night, I watched them win the bid. They held each other like they'd just received a treasure, not a thing. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. The cradle Tara had called junk, had thrown away without thought, had mocked in front of others, had become the blueprint for something larger than her opinion. It had become a symbol of care, of craftsmanship, of worth not dictated by trend or approval. It had become a legacy. And I had become untouchable. Not because I shouted, not because I fought back, but because I remembered who I was when they forgot. When I stepped back into the studio the next morning, the light was already warm through the windows. My hands moved easily. There was another order waiting. Another family I'd never met trusting me with their story. So I picked up the chisel, placed my hand on the grain, and began again.